Correctional officers in prison. 5 deadly things that will get you put into prison working as a correctional officer. Hi, I'm Gary York, True Prison Stories. Please subscribe if you like this video. Well, the number one thing that will put you in prison quickly is making deals with the inmates. Making deals such as drug deals, smuggling in weapons for inmates. That, in my book, is number one. Because when you do this, you have crossed the line and placed everyone in danger. Now, what happens, somebody asked me, when a correctional officer goes to prison? Well, in many cases, they don't go to prison. But in some, they do. People say, well, why don't they go to prison? Well, correctional officers have to have a clean background check before they become a correctional officer. So then they commit a crime. Depending on the nature of the crime, they could just end up on probation. Or they could get fired and lose their certification. But there are some things that will get you in prison, such as dealing with inmates trafficking in drugs, using a trafficking amount and being involved with it. And when you deal with inmates, that's easily connected with your financial records, your phones, and anything they catch you with when the time comes for the sting operation to bring you down. Okay? Good thing. Good thing. We want these officers out, and we want them to go to prison. Now, do these officers get hurt when they go to prison? Well, I know several cases right here in Florida where the officers got 3 years, another officer got 5 years, and another one I'm thinking about for pills, bringing pills to inmates, got 3 years. They were put into the state prison system here in Florida with the inmates. They did not ask for protective custody. They were right there with the inmates. What I'm seeing, and not just from those 3 cases, but other cases, when bad cops help the bad guys, the inmates, or street drug dealers to make money and do drugs and sell drugs, they sometimes don't have a problem in prison. I'm just being honest with you. Not like a pedophile or a child molester would. Okay? Some of them will still have trouble depending on how cocky they are, or if they cheated somebody out there when they were making the deals with the bad guys, skimmed off the top or skimmed off the bottom, however you want to say it. But they usually, from what I've seen, had no trouble being in prison with the inmates. Survived their 3. Now, all 3 of these guys I'm talking about, one was for cocaine, Zephyr Hills Correctional Institution. He did 3 years, survived, and he's out. One was Polk County Jail Detention Deputy, pain pills, did 3 years in prison, and he came out. And the other was Miami Dade Jail Sergeant bringing drugs into Charlotte Correctional Institution. And she did her time and came out okay. So, there's one topic. But the second topic I want to talk about, they seem to have a little more trouble in prison as an ex-cop. Wrongful death or excessive force. Okay, you got 1 strike against you already when you go to prison, being an ex-cop or ex-law enforcement. Now they find out, the inmates, and they have ways of finding out. I know people can say, they'll never find out they're a cop. They will. They will find out. They know. And this officer was sentenced to prison for wrongful shooting, excessive force where somebody died, and it was determined during the investigation and the trial that they were guilty, and they're sentenced to prison. Now, these ex-officers have trouble. They need to be checked in for protection, most of them. Also, in the federal prison system, when officers are sentenced, they, to me, have it the easiest. The federal prison system can send you anywhere in the U.S., and they have some real sweet camps, as they call it. Some real easy, lightweight prisons that these officers can go to. Is that right? Well, I think everybody should be treated the same once you have committed a crime or been convicted of a crime, either by admission of guilt and plea or by a jury of your peers. However, it is the duty of the prison system to protect the officers, so have to do the best you can. In a state prison, it's not as easy, in my opinion, as a federal system. So when I was asked, do cops have a hard time if they get sentenced to prison for doing something wrong, I'm not trying to be wishy-washy, but it is what I've determined. Certain crimes, they'll have a harder time than others, especially if they were corrupt cops helping the bad guys. They seem to somehow survive their prison sentence without a scratch. And then wrongful death, we just had something in the news 2 or 3 weeks ago. One of the officers involved in a wrongful death was attacked by another inmate. See, it kind of proves my point. Now, the third type is a correctional officer, law enforcement, criminal justice officer who's been put in prison for child molesting or is determined to be a pedophile, which has happened. We had a sergeant, 18, 19 years on the job, babysat his daughter's daughter, his granddaughter. He was convicted of molesting her. Now you got 2 strikes against you. You are an ex-cop and you're a child molester. You're in trouble. You better check in and stay checked in. Okay? Those are 3 of the biggies. And just to note some of the things that get officers put in prison. Stalking. We've had officers get divorced, can't get their wife, or break up with their girlfriend and can't get their girlfriend out of their mind. They begin stalking her. Also begin stalking the new husband or the new boyfriend. And they get put in the slammer. So when the inmates find out that the officer is an ex-officer and a stalker, they get a little leery of them as well. But I can tell you right now, a lot of officers have survived their prison sentences much more than a child molester or pedophile, because the person that asked me had watched my video, Pedophiles in Prison, and said, how is it with ex-cops? Where are they in the food chain in prison? Which is a good question, because we have ex-officers in prison, and some people want to know. Yes, some have been killed in prison, some have been beaten, but nothing near what happens to a child molester or a pedophile. Anyway, I'd like to close by saying these small percentage, this is a small percentage of rotten apples that taint the image of the honest officers. So, this is not the norm for 97.7% of the officers. Okay? Somebody asked me once when I was a prison inspector and we discussed it in our office, how many correctional officers do you think are corrupt in Florida? What's the percentage? Well, it's hard to say, but 4 out of every 100 employees anywhere, doctor, lawyer, anywhere, school teachers, you know, they're getting arrested here and there, some of them. Lawyers are getting arrested. 4 out of 100 have done something wrong on the job. So, let's go with 4%. That won't be my percentage. That's something that a study has found. 4% of any workforce has done something wrong. So see, it's not just corrections, it's anywhere. But for some reason, corrections gets the front page news, law enforcement gets the front page news, and some of these other occupations, 3 or 4 pages down in the newspaper in the fine print. Hey, but we're public servants, and they put us out there. But anyway, I hope that answers some questions about officers going to prison. Thank you very much for watching. Gary York, True Prison.